I hate this new thing that they're doing. Right, is that actually working? I have to go onto Facebook and have a look, see if it is actually working. Really don't like this new way of doing it. Let's have a look. It says I'm on. Can't see. Page. Oh, come on, load up, you silly thing. Okay, so everything's gone a bit nuts. My Facebook isn't loading on my phone, so I can't actually see if there's anything on, if this video's on, if it's working, or anything. Really helpful. Really, really helpful. So I have no idea if I'm on or not. The Facebook on my phone has crashed, which is really not helpful. I have nothing on the screen. It says I'm on, but I have no idea, to be honest. I hate this new thing on the videos. I really, really do. I really, really do. And the signal has now dropped out completely to go along with me not knowing if I'm on or not. Yay! Thank you, Kate. I know there's a bit of lag, but as long as you can see me and hear me. My camera's at a funny position because the flaming thing keeps falling off, and the pneumatic lift in my seat is knackered. So you get it to the height you want it to, and as you're talking, you slowly shrink down. So it's an odd angle. But as long as somebody can see and hear me, that's good. So tonight we're going to talk about the convent, which most people are completely unaware that we even have one in Elgin. The convent is the reason we have places called Greyfriars Street and things like that. Thanks, Naomi. The convent was the Greyfriars Franciscan, and it was granted permission to exist in 1479 by Pope Sixtus IV. He was the one who gave them permission to build a Franciscan order there. Then a year later, he issued another papal bull. Basically, it's an order from the Pope, or a permission slip from the Pope. They call it a papal bull. Why a bull? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I haven't actually looked that up. I am using my notes because it's a long time since I did anything on the convent. In 1480, they were granted, through another papal bull, as many trees as they required from Quarrel Wood, which is the ancient woodland that goes from Spiny Hospital to the Oakwood. What used to be the Oakwood is now a kitchen place, and a little bit further on. They were granted as many trees as they needed. The founder was a John Innes. He was one of the ones who was involved in requesting permission for the Franciscan Friary to exist. So he's classed as the founder. The first friar, the boss in charge of the monks, was a Francis Innes, who was the brother to John Innes. Oh look, I just got a Facebook notification to tell me I'm live. Woohoo! So John Innes and Francis Innes appear to be brothers. They're definitely related anyway. The last friar, when it was the Greyfriars that was there, was Anthony Urquhart in 1560. When the Reformation kicked in 1560 and closed Elgin Cathedral down, the Earl of Huntly, who oddly enough is buried in Elgin Cathedral and is related to George, who stands on top of Lady Hill, the Earl of Huntly trashed every Catholic building in Elgin. The cathedral, the friary, which we now call the convent, St Giles Church, trashed all of them. So now I really want to know why he's buried in Elgin Cathedral, but I haven't had time to research that bit yet. But he didn't do the worst thing to the abbey. I'm just going to call it the abbey rather than the friary and the convent. The worst thing happened the same year. Alexander Innes, the grandson of the guy who founded the building, set fire to it in 1560. So you've got the Reformation, the Earl of Huntly's going around trashing every Catholic building he can find, and then the grandson of the founder goes and burns the friary down, the abbey down. Busy year 1560 in Elgin. By the end of the 1500s, it was being used as a justice house, so it was basically like an extra little court. The courtroom that is currently used in Elgin was not there and would not be there until the 1800s. So this was being used as a justice house. Nice big rooms so you can have a decent sized audience or jury, but I'm not even sure juries had been used at that period either, to be honest. In 1600, the building was sold to Bishop Ross, who really didn't do anything with it. And it was used by the incorporated trades as a meeting house. Now, what's the incorporated trades? The incorporated trades: jewellers, tinsmiths, stonemasons, joiners. None of them had those names. Hammermen was one, which could be a tinsmith or a jeweller, and so on and so forth. They used the abbey as a meeting place. They also used the chapter house at Elgin Cathedral as a meeting place later on, so presumably after people started showing an interest in Greyfriars, they had to move their meetings on to, presumably, the chapter house at Elgin Cathedral, which was still not being used. They kept up the little bits and pieces of the rooms that they were using. They made sure that everything was still wind and watertight, as they did at the cathedral too. They were a real good bunch of lads, these. Basically, it's like a big union, but it's got all the different job titles under it. Then in 1684, we have Mr. William King. He would later become the provost of Elgin. He and his family moved into the cloisters and pretty much left the rest of the building to collapse. The church was still being used, so it was looked after, as was the bit that the King family lived in. but the rest of the building was left to collapse. Mr. King and his subsequent generations of his family lived there for 120 years. The church was kept up, and eventually in 1891, what's not actually in the little ancient guidebook that I've got, 1891, the building reverted back to the church for one simple reason. The last member of the King family who lived there, yeah, it is D. The last member of the King family who lived there had a multitude of illegitimate children, and everybody was fighting over who should inherit it, who should live there, who should get money out of it, and all the rest of it. In the finish up, his oldest child, who would have been like 30 odd by then, gifted the whole place back to the church to stop everybody fighting. So it was gifted back to the church in 1891. This is when the Sisters of Mercy came in. Remember the wee Irish wifeys that used to be there years ago? This is when the beginning of their order moved in. Now, the order had only been formed in 1860, had the Sisters of Mercy. So it had only been going for 30 years when they were given the Abbey in Elgin. They started trying to fix it up, but they couldn't afford to. So they were doing it piecemeal, little by little, room by room, just doing what they could afford. And then eventually, the third Marquis of Bute stepped in, and no expense was spared in completing the reparations to the building, making the entire site habitable, usable. Yeah, Sylvia. You've got to be my age or more to remember them, though, Sylvia. Yeah, so the third Marquis of Bute didn't spare any expense in fixing up the Abbey so that it was able to be used, able to be lived in, as it was originally intended. And after he died, the work was completed by his son, Lord Colum Crichton Stuart. In 1898, it reopened as a convent. Now, the other thing that's conspicuously missing from the site guidebook that was produced is the two early orders of monks, the two early orders of Greyfriars that were fired from the building. The first set, I thought it was 1300s, but it has to be 1479 onwards. The first set were thrown out after 50, 60 years because there were a few pregnancies popped up in the locale, which does not include their vow of celibacy. Second band of Franciscan monks that was put in there, there were more babies popped up. And one young lady disappeared. She was found 6 months later in the herb garden. But this is all way, way back. You know, this is between 1479 and 1560. It's a very, very long time ago. Coming back to the modern, what you can't see from the roadside. Hey, Grace. Yeah, I'm all good here. When you look from the roadside, you can see the end of the church and the big gateway. Behind that, there is a square formation, the bit that I've used in the photo for the event for tonight. That photo is the internal courtyard in the middle of the cloisters. In the middle of that courtyard is a well that has been there since 1479. That well used to be regularly cleaned until 1560, when the Reformation shut everything down. In 1990, they cleaned the well again for the first time since 1560. This is where I have to go to the guidebook. When they cleaned the well, they found, where's it gone? It's 31 foot deep. There we go. Well in the centre of the cloisters. During restoration, it was discovered that the well had not been sited precisely in the centre of the square, and the surrounding parapet was re-erected just a few inches away from the original. So basically, the shaft of the well is like here, and the bit that's above ground is kind of here. So it's a bit wonky. So presumably the old one had been broken, and when they rebuilt it, they didn't quite line it up properly. It's only a couple inches out of line, so it doesn't matter. The well shaft is still completely usable. Still fed by an active spring, and the water is never ever stagnant in that well, even on the hottest day. In 1991, when it was cleaned, they found the well was 31 foot deep with 7 feet of fresh spring water in the middle, in the bottom. There's the courtyard and the well. That's the bit that looks a little bit like the Harry Potter stuff. The sisters, now bear in mind this was written when the Sisters of Mercy were there. The sisters still use the old refectory, the canteen. Central heating makes the massive stone fireplace obsolete. They haven't included a photo of the fireplace, unfortunately, but there is a fantastic, huge fireplace in there. Part of the convent garden was ploughed up in 1988, and Murray District Council landscaped the area and turned it into a rose garden, which is the bit that was open to the public. Not sure if the Dominican Sisters have that bit open to the public yet or not, but of course everything's shut anyway at the moment, which is why I'm doing this. It is one of the town's oldest buildings, still in use, and the rest tells you about the works of the Sisters of Mercy. But nowadays, it is the Dominican Sisters of St. Cecillia. And I can't say that without getting that old track from the 90s stuck in my head. Cecilia, you're breaking my heart. So, some of you who lived near the building have noticed the same thing I noticed last year. The little yard that serves as their graveyard, half of it's been turned into a car park at some point in the last 10 years. I can only say at some point in the last 10 years because it's 10 years since I was there, and I only noticed the difference a few months back. And it was a photo somebody else had put on Facebook, and I'm like, hang on a minute, that's where some of the Mother Superiors were buried. So, haunted car park spaces. If you're going to move a grave and put a car park in there, yeah, expect your car alarms to go off. That's the end of my notes. Right. Inside, because even though a lot of time, centuries even, it wasn't being used, it was never really emptied. And as each of the ministers, priests, bishops, and the sisters themselves have been in, people have bought furniture to add to the abbey, to the convent. In the vestry, there is a fantastic Dutch table from the 1700s. It's all painted. You know, like how you see old-fashioned canal boats painted? This table's painted just like they would be, with the real bright colours. and the fancy patterns and the wee floral designs. It's painted just like that. Beautiful. And I thought it had been somebody's project in like the 1970s. And when I was given the tour from one of the little Irish ladies that used to be there, she's like, oh, no, that's like 300 years old. I'm like, really? Wow. I thought it was about 30 years old at that point. When you're in the church itself, the pews are all highly carved, especially in the choir section. And they're moulded so there's just enough room to get in and out without, well, you can't move anything anyway because it's solid pieces. There's fruit and flowers carved in them that you will also see echoed in some of the designs in Elgin Cathedral. So I think when they were doing some of the interior work, they were looking at the cathedral and taking some design inspiration from there, because the fruits and flowers are very similar to some bits inside the cathedral. Also in the church, you'll notice there's, I don't know if you can see it from the public side, but you can see it when you go to have a look around. There's a wee window way high up the wall. It's called a squint window. That window goes into the infirmary. It's a room for those who are sick. So if one of the sisters was sick, or one of the brothers, if you go back to when it was the friars, they could stay in their sick room and still see and hear the church service without having to leave their bed. And so they could still be part of the community, still take part in what was their normal daily life for those. Nowadays, of course, it's very much modernised, but a lot of the rooms are pretty much as you would have found them if you'd have gone in at any point since the invention of electricity. Very simple rooms. You have a wee bed, a wee table, a wee bookcase if you've got space, and that's about it. They have a library on site. Inside the library is where they have a computer that they can all use if they want to. There is also the office, which has another computer. So there's only 2 computers on site, but you don't need it because there's so much to do. Oh, the pudding tat! Yes! The pudding tat was discovered when they were doing some of the work. I think it has to be the stuff that came under the Marquis of Bute's time. They found the cat in the walls, and at first there was all sorts of rumours and stuff flying about. Oh, it's this, it's that, it's magic. No, it's nae. It was a way of blessing the building. I've seen the pudding tat. He looks like he was a nice one in his time. One of the other ways that people had stuff in the walls to bless the place, to protect the place, sometimes you would find shoes. Now, I've recently been in a pub that is under construction at the moment, shall we say. It's under reparation and a revamp. And they found a shoe in the wall. And when I was speaking to them, they were going to throw it out. And I'm like, dinna throw it out. Have it on display or whatever, but make sure it stays in the building. Because these things are put there to give the building a bit of luck, a bit of protection. The shoe probably belongs to one of the original builders of the building, or at least part of the building. The cat could well have been somebody's cat who worked on the building. So, yeah, the cat is normally on display in the museum. But this is the thing. I feel like I want to send you to all these places and we can't go anywhere. A lot of the ground around the convent now would have been part of the grounds of the building, because there's never just the church and the cloisters. There's always like 2 or 3 other buildings, as you've maybe seen on the picture of the Kinloss Abbey. There's always 2 or 3 other buildings, because you've got people who are working on site to help them with the gardens, with the crops, because they all have to be self-sufficient and all the rest of it. So anywhere around Abbey Street, Glover Street, and so on and so forth, you would find bits and pieces belonging to the convent. I know 3/4 of the way down Abbey Street, there is a little black door that goes into a garden. This little black door has a teeny little window, just about the size of your face, with twisted iron bars on it. And I'm presuming on the inside it's got the old-fashioned latch where you have a block of wood with handles on it and you slide it closed or slide it open. These are like when you see in a movie where somebody's like, the woman's life's in danger and her dad or her husband says, get thee to a nunnery for protection. No worries, Audrey. It's still blacking out for me every few seconds as well. It's not a problem. Stupid Facebook. Cool, thanks, Dave. Yeah, so it's one of these little, when somebody comes looking for these women who have been sent to the nunnery for protection, you tap on the door, and you see it in the movies where the nun opens the wee window. Who are you? What do you want here? No, they're not here. Close it, lock it. There's a wee gate like that down Abbey Street. It's now going into somebody's garden. Well, that's what it looks like from the street side anyway. But that would have been one of these little gates where they're checking who's knocking on the door before they decide whether they're going to open the door or not. There are a couple of manses on Abbey Street from different time periods too. One of them appears to be late 1800s, has a spiral in the chimney. I don't know why. It might just be, oh, that's pretty, let's make a curly chimney. I don't know. But it's got a spiral pattern on the chimney. There's another one that has alternate chimneys. One's on the square, the other one's on a diagonal like a diamond, and so on and so forth. You've got a block of 3 chimneys, and each one's at an ever so slightly different angle to make you look. Because, of course, during the 1500s, right up into the early 1900s, the more chimneys your building had, the more money you had to be able to afford fuel for all these chimneys. So that's the way a lot of buildings have chimneys that aren't actually used. So make sure that whether it's one that's being used or not before you decide to cap it, close it off or whatever. A few manses down there. And I can't think what else. Now, the wee Irish wifeys, when they were retired, there was only 3 of them left when they retired. Allegedly, I don't know for sure, there is a street in Aberdeen with a big house, come old folks' home, at either end of that street. And at one end is the old folks' home for retired monks. At the other end is the old folks' home for retired nuns. I don't know if this is true or not. This is just what I was told. So I have to say, allegedly. They were all moved in there, and the convent stood empty for a wee while. And it was starting to look like it was going to need a lot more work to fix it up, get it back in use again. It was starting to look like it was going to go the same way as Grant Lodge. And then the ladies from America appeared. I didn't know they were turning up. I just randomly saw a nun walking down the street one day, and I'm like, oh wow, hi. The current ones are the Dominican Sisters of St. Cecillia. They go for, well, before lockdown, you will see a few of them, if not all of them, on their morning constitutional. What we would do is a nice slow saunter, because they're reading while they're walking. They do on a quick march speed. I have no idea how they can walk that fast and still read at the same time, but they do. One of them helps out with the horticulture department of Murray College. And the first time I ever saw her, I was giggling myself silly. I couldn't help myself. Number one, it was only the second time I had ever seen a nun in white rather than black or grey. Number two, she's got her beautiful sparkling white habit on, with a dirty great pair of wellies and a knee-length waterproof jacket. And it was just such a sight, I just collapsed into giggles. And I'm like, I'm really, really sorry, I'm not taking the mick. It's just so funny to see a nun with wellies and a waterproof on. Nowadays, it's a regular sight, you know. Because, yeah, okay, they have to wear specific clothing, but they don't have to get soaked or filthy. So, of course, they got protective wear. These ladies have reinstigated the retreat within the convent as well, up until before lockdown, of course. There were people, every so often you just see the nuns going round with people, and these people were staying with them on retreat. So it's a way of checking and building on their own faith and helping others, while also being helped by the sisters. It's a lovely wee thing. They do the same at Plusgarden. The monks do the same at Plusgarden. You can go and retreat there too. So, see, there we go with that soul word again. Yeah, exactly, yeah. And most people have seen her going about with her oilies and her waterproofs on. Well, it's just so funny to see it over the top of a nun's habit. The building is beautiful. Every so often they do open days. Keep your eye open for them. And if you can go when they have one, you will love it. Obviously, on the open days, you don't get to go around all of it, because they have to have their living quarters private and everything. But you still get to see a good sizable chunk of the building. The rafters in the place alone are a sight to behold. They are huge. The nice little walkway all around the cloisters, around the courtyard. It's glazed, so it's warm, it's interior, whereas originally it would have been exterior, like on the Harry Potter movie, where you see them going through these wooden corridors and it's windy and stuff. No, the ones there are enclosed. Do make a point of going and having a look if you see they've got an open day coming up. Goodness knows when it'll be, though. Goodness knows when any of us get to go out and about at this stage. The rose garden was very, very neglected. When the Irish ladies were there was really only like 3 or 4 of them left, and the youngest one was 89. So that's enough a big garden for a couple of old wifeys, you know. So it was really quite neglected. So hopefully the Dominican sisters have managed to bring it back up a wee bit. But there is a lot of work to be done. It's a big place. There's a lot of general housekeeping to be done because it's so big. And then, of course, you've got any repairs necessary, and so on and so forth. The other thing that some of you older folks will remember is there was a school within the grounds of the convent. one of the little rooms that they used for tea and coffee on their open days was one of the classrooms back then. Now, the only bit I can find on the school, yeah, don't worry, as soon as I see one, I will be taking a photo with the poster and putting it on here. The school, when I find it, St Mary's School, was a private establishment which took in boarders. It closed some years ago. That's all it says in the book. It closed some years ago. The sisters also ran a very successful commercial and music school. In 1968, there was some doubt about the future of St Sylvester's Murray. Murray and Nairn Education Committee wanted to close it, but thanks to parents and the support of the two provosts of Elgin, Sybil Duncan and George Smith, the school was saved. It continues to thrive, because of course this is talking about the new St Sylvester's School, not the original one. Continues to thrive, and a recent decision was taken to erect a new school building. That shows you how old this is. The St Sylvester School building's been there for quite a while now. And it's taken to erect a new school building on the site of the old St Mary's, which will be demolished. So, St Mary's School was demolished. In 1970, Greyfriars was invaded by the BBC as Songs of Praise was broadcast from the church. The sisters, this is the Sisters of Mercy, it's not the modern ones. Although I would think they're just the same. But yeah, some of the pictures in this are really quite cool though. So there's the front cover. I'm just going to show you all the pictures. That's inside the chapel. That's the altar of the chapel. It really, really is a beautiful building. Where are we now? Ah, yes, this is the Joe Public entrance to the church. Joe Public goes in the little side door, the same as you would have at Elgin Cathedral. The big fancy door was only reserved for the high-level dignitaries and nobles of the area. Now, I know this is still here. This is the rood screen. The rood screen is a wooden structure that's put up between where Joe Public sits and where the ceremony actually takes place. This is what you would see if you went in for a service. This is the part of the room you would see. And the choir and everybody else would be behind the screen. So Joe Public doesn't get to see that side, the other side. But I know this screen is still here with the little figures in the painting. This is the bit that if this was Elgin Cathedral, this is the bit that the Earl of Huntly tore down and put on fire. And then we have the amazing pews. Now, the carving on these pews is pretty amazing. I don't know if it'll show up very well from this photo. You see, it's like the American school desks. Each person has an arm to lean on. Although presumably it's more a case of to help you up and down from your knees. And I don't know if you can make out the fruit and vines that are carved into it or not. I've showed you the chapel. Now, in the courtyard, see these little covered walkways here? This is what they're like on the inside. They're not all very well lit. But these is as they were restored during the Marquis of Bute's time. The wee grotto inside was gifted by a parishioner. The wee grotto that's in the corner. It's a nice wee place to chill out. The smells of the flowers wafting up. And then of course we have the back gates. Or the front gates, depending what area of the building you're approaching. And that's it. There's not a very much in this guidebook at all. But there are some lovely bits and pieces in the building. The building itself is beautiful. I know the last open day that the sisters did, they did manage to raise quite a lot of money. So I hope when things return to normal, they will do another open day. And don't worry, as soon as I know, I will see it. The sisters that live there now have a Facebook page. So if you want, you can do a search on your Facebook for Dominican Sisters of St. Cecillia in Scotland. I'll put it in the comments thing. That's the sisters' Facebook page there. And if I do a better link, I'll actually take a link from their page. That's not the link. That's not the link, you numpty. Da da da. Sorry, my brain is mince. I've been all day outside painting and my brain is mince at the moment. There's the link to the sisters' page. Oh, that's lovely, Sarah. So yeah, again, tomorrow, it looks like it's going to be raining. So I will be hitting the books tomorrow. Because I have let myself down today. I've been too busy with other stuff. So I've let myself down on this. So I will apologise now. Does anybody else have any stories from the building? Or any buildings that they want to add to the list? And of course now it's added to my Facebook. My Facebook has come alive on my phone apparently. I'm just going to make sure that I'm not missing any comments because I've not seen anything much on here at all. It is a beautiful building, Naomi, yeah. But as I say, as soon as I see any kind of open day popping up, I will be sharing it on the page. Don't you worry about that. Greyfriars Land is traditionally haunted. Some of their grounds actually goes as far as being horrendously haunted. I know a particular building, don't name it D. Yeah, there is a robed figure wanders round where it was the supermarket, yeah. Don't name it D, but there is a part of the grounds for Greyfriars that has had an exorcism carried out on it. And it didn't fully work. There's still stuff happens. The people who are in said buildings still report things to each other. Nobody reports it officially because, you know, in this day and age, you're taught not to make a fuss. So, but where, right, in the 1500s, the whole of that corner where the council building is now, all the way down to Institution Road where the back gate is for St Sylvester's and where the church is for St Sylvester's. That whole block was the abbey, the convent, the friary, whatever you want to call it, okay? The bit that was the supermarket, the bit that's now the front door for the council, as I'm just gonna do that bit that's now the council. The bit that's now the front door for the council used to be the cafe when it was a supermarket. And you couldn't go in that way because it was just a big fancy window. You went in halfway up the building and you would go off to your right to get to the cafe. And just before you get to the cafe, there was a wee corridor went off to your left, which took you to where the public toilets was for the ladies anyway. I didn't actually notice if the gents was still down there, but that's where the ladies was. And I was in there one time, and I opened the door to go into the loo, and I saw flagstone floor, a little wooden bed, a wee table with a candle and a cross. And I'm like, what's going on here? So I shut my eyes, opened them again, it was still the same. So I'm like, okay, not today. So I wandered off back towards the shop, and I got 3 steps down the corridor. I thought, no, I actually really need the loo. So I went back and I opened the door, and it was back to its normal 2 cubicles, 2 sinks, and a great big huge mirror. Why I saw the other bit, I have no idea. But I'm not the only one who's seen that particular section of history superimpose itself. So, me being me, I went and had a nosy. Old maps. Couldn't get actual blueprints for buildings because they didn't exist in the 1400s. So I went with the old maps. Where the cafe bit was, where the reception area is now for the council, was a dormitory for visitors. So if you were one of the ladies on retreat or one of the ladies trying to escape a brutal husband or family member, this is one of the rooms that you would have been staying in. That building that was on that site is where they would put you. That was your dormitory. Dormitory actually means the place where you sleep. So, no big mystery there. Because I saw a bed and a wee table and so on and so forth. One of the other things, when it was a supermarket, there's 2 young lads working away one night, and one of them gets an apple bounced off his head. So he turns around to his pal and said, "What'd you do that for?" "I never did anything, don't look at me." 10 minutes later, he gets a cabbage bounced off his head. No, the old convent. Emma, the old convent. Behind the council. Now I'm talking about the supermarket that is now the council. Opposite the ex-servicemen's. So the second boy gets a cabbage bounced off his head. And he didn't say anything, he just turned round and attacked his pal that he was working with. So the boss shouts over the tannoy, "Get up here, now!" The boss is only there as a key holder. Aye, exactly, Dee. Boss is only there as a key holder, so the boss really has nothing to do. They're just waiting for them to finish so everybody can go home and they can lock the door. So the boys go upstairs to see the boss. What happened? Well, he did this and he did that, as they do. Late teens, both guys. So the boss turns around and he's like, okay. I really don't care what happened, but I want the two of you to get back to work. The quicker you're done, the quicker we can all go home. So they go downstairs, carry on working. So the boss rewinds the tape and decides he's going to have a nosy. This is back in the days when CCTV was actually on videotapes instead of DVDs. Rewinds the tape, and there it is, for all to see. An apple lifts from the display, hesitates for a quarter of a second, bounces off the boy's head. And then a wee bit further on, the cabbage lifts from the display, hesitates, and off the other boy's head. Obviously, the cabbage is going to hurt quite a bit more than an apple. The boss was quite intrigued with this. And in some weird way, kind of thought it was funny that they'd started fighting over something that neither of them actually did. So at the end of the night, the boys go upstairs to get their jackets to go home. The boss is like, "Here, boys, I've got something to show you." And he rewinds the tape and shows them. Neither one of them worked night shift again. Another one, same building. In the middle of the night, by this time it's Morrison's by this time. Middle of the night, the alarm goes off. The manager gets a phone call from the police. "You need to come and reset your alarm. We're going to check the building. Da 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 da." Okay, so the manager gets there, lets them in. Bobbies are like, "Right, you stay in your office, lock yourself in. We'll search the building, make sure nobody fell asleep in the giant pile of cardboard boxes that used to be at the end of every roll of tills in every supermarket back then. Or make sure nobody fell asleep in the lavies, or whatever. We'll just search the building. You lock yourself in, you'll be safe." Okay. So they lock themselves in. And a wee while later, one of the bobbies comes up. "Aye, it's me." "Okay." Opens the door. "Yeah, we need your key code to open the door to the delivery bay." "Why is that?" "Because we haven't been able to search that bit because that door's locked." "Okay, no problem." So they go down, put their key into the keypad, their number into the keypad, open the door to the delivery bays. Here's the external delivery bay door, wide open to the world. "Ah, there's your problem. Somebody didn't lock the door." "Aye, okay." So we shut and lock the door. They reset the alarm code, shut the dividing door between the store and that door. Finish the search of the building. Everybody goes home. Locks the door. Everybody goes home. On the way home, the manager's like, if that door wasn't locked, the alarm wouldn't have set in the first place. So why did the alarm go off? And how did it manage to reset? What happened? They just couldn't understand what had actually happened. So the following day, when they're back on duty, they went through the videotapes. And 2 seconds before the alarm goes off, you've got the exterior delivery bay doors locked. You can see a few hours earlier the staff member setting the keypad thingy to lock them and put the alarm on. 2 seconds before the alarm goes off, you see those doors pile open like there's a huge crowd of folk running through. But there's not a single person on the camera. So they're like, that's weird. Because the police had been called out, they had to file a report with head office. Head office wanted to see the CCTV tapes as well. Head office thinking all publicity is good publicity, issued an article in the local press. Come visit the haunted store, which they regretted within 48 hours. Aye, yeah. Within 48 hours of this article appearing in the press, the kiosk queue, the fag counter queue, 40-50 people in the queue. About 5 of them wanted to buy cigarettes or had a query that needed to be answered by the kiosk staff. The other 40 odd of them were like, excuse me, can you tell me about your ghostie? So, within 2 days, the kiosk staff complained to the manager. The manager passed this on to head office. So, excuse me, can you tell me about your ghostie? Was met with a bit of paper with head office's telephone number and address for you to write to them to get the full story, to free up the time of the staff who actually worked in the shop. As far as I know, nobody's ever actually investigated it. As far as I know, there are hundreds of people who were unnerved in those toilets or in the cafe when it was a supermarket. And as far as I know, there are currently 15 female staff at Murray District Council who refuse to use one particular bathroom. Now, of course, the interior layout is completely different to what it was when it was a supermarket. But from what some of them have told me, it's not too far away from where that other toilet was. So, potentially, there is still someone there. There's been a robed, hooded figure seen wandering what would now be the confines of that building. But back when it was like a wee square, kind of like the bitty opposite the Muckle Cross, there's that wee square where the shop mobility is. There was a wee bit like that there when I was little. I found stories of people seeing the hooded robed figure back then in the 70s. So the hooded robed figure has been seen at the very, very least from the 60s and 70s onwards. But the hooded robed figure is usually described as brown or black, which makes no sense whatsoever. Because the building was run originally by the Greyfriars. Sisters of Mercy were different. It is among the oldest bits, yeah, basically from the museum down to the back of the cathedral is basically the oldest bit of Elgin. Between the cathedral and the abbey, they are the only bits that I can actually track back but they're not the absolute oldest. The absolute oldest section of Elgin is between Costa and Poundland. That's the oldest bit of Elgin. The bit that's now the Plainstones. That's the bit that appears on the maps from 1,000 years ago. And Lady Hill Castle. The town seems to be 900s. Then you have Lady Hill Castle. Then in the 1200s you have the cathedral. And then in the 1400s you have the abbey. But you've still got that little section in the middle, the old High Street, which is now some of the most modern buildings, but never mind. Time marches on, as always. But yeah, the oldest section is technically the Plainstones. But they're not the oldest structure. It's the oldest bit of town if you take the structure away and expose the old stuff. So anytime anybody's digging a hole in the Plainstones, have a look. See if there's anything in it. So that's a bit of a mishmash on the convent and the friary that was Greyfriars and is now the Dominican Sisters, St. Cecillia. Tomorrow is... What's tomorrow? I did write it down. Tomorrow's looking like Coxton Tower. So yes, I will be spending most of tomorrow with my head in a book. I have a lot of work to do on Coxton Tower because there's not that much in my head. So in the meantime, I will leave you to it, and I will apologise for having a disjointed brain case tonight. Lockdown is finally starting to get to me because I'm remembering all this stuff I'm supposed to be doing, and I actually haven't got time to do it. Or if I do it, I haven't got time to do the research for these. Something's got to give somewhere. But for now, we'll leave it as it is. I will be here tomorrow. Thunderton House, I will add to the list. Yep, I'll add it to the list, Naomi. There's a lot of blood round the cathedral, though, Emma. A lot of blood round the cathedral. From before the time of the cathedral, too. So have a good night, whatever you're up to, folks. Look after you and yours. Now I'm going to go get my supper before my stomach starts chiming in and joining in the conversation. Take care. See you tomorrow. Night, night.